Welcome. My name is Wigger. I'm a South Asia expert based in Berlin, working with the Candid Foundation and Zenith magazine, which is a magazine focused on the extended Middle East and Islamic world, based in Berlin. So we are here at the Bay of Bengal conversation in Dhaka, which is hosted by the Center for Governance Studies, CGS. And I'm very glad to be here. We are here to discuss in a studio session the topic of redefining diplomacy in a divided world. And I have two fantastic guests to discuss this topic. One of them is Ario Bimo, who is an assistant professor from East Java in Indonesia, and will share his perspective from Indonesia on this important topic. And we have Sabyasachi Dutta from the Asian Confluence, a think tank based in Meghalaya, India, where he is the executive director. So if we think about the topic of redefining diplomacy in a divided world, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that diplomacy probably has seen much better times than at the moment. I mean, we see a United Nations in crisis. There's a deadlock. Reforms are needed, but nothing is really moving forward. No one is able to really make the step to give up veto powers, for example, for reforms. We see an increase in transactional policy on an international stage. We see, something is changing. New organizations are coming up. Older organizations are losing influence, but where do we actually stand? And this is something that we want to discuss first. So what is your assessment? Where do we stand? Do you share my critical assessment of the situation, of the state of diplomacy in 2024? Ario, what is your opinion on that?
Okay, thank you, Leo. As a city diplomacy expert myself, I agree that currently the state of diplomacy is in gridlock in the sense that we cannot solely rely on states or on nation states to conduct everything at once, especially given that in the era of globalization, virtually all problems are not only in the international stage but needs to be localized. We still remember how destructive the COVID-19 pandemic and it unveils the flaw of the nation-state system. So I believe that the alternative of the future is we have to localize the diplomacy in the sense that subnational governments can also take part in diplomacy. I'm a keen advocate of city diplomacy, meaning that cities are now regarded as the main hubs of international affairs. When we think about diplomacy, we usually imagine the image of presidents, prime minister from the 193 UN nations going together. But very rarely we imagine diplomacy as a connection between approximately 10,000 cities in the world. I regard that cities have this sort of capacity to localize the global issues in the sense that they are the front runners of the solution. Well, for instance, the environmental issues, health issues, pollutions, or maybe some other grassroots issues are mainly felt in the cities first. Cities experience the problems first before we talk about the big things in the international stage. So, in my opinion, we have to put cities as the front runner in terms of global diplomacy. So, mayors should now take more action in collaborating with the foreign partners to tackle global problems, especially in terms of development. And also, we are now talking about sustainable development as well. We still have approximately 5 years remaining before the fulfillment of the SDGs. So in the sense, cities can cooperate with each other to share best practices and to learn from the better ones, so they can develop their cities and as a result, can also help the development of their respective nation states. So that's my general opinion in this case.
Right. So basically, there is a crisis, but there are also solutions, and one of them could be city diplomacy. Before we jump into what city diplomacy actually means and how it looks like, what the challenges and opportunities of city diplomacy are, let me introduce or let me get our second guest in. What is your opinion, assessment on the state of diplomacy today, and how are you tackling that?
Well, I mean, as you very correctly said, that we are in a state of crisis. From right at the top, which is the United Nations, which is rather fragmented. Two, we see multilateralism is in danger, but at the same time, there are overarching problems such as climate change. I think the pandemic showed an angle that borders really didn't matter. Nation states crises transcend nation states, and it is important to work together. So on one side we see a challenge to multilateralism. We see an increasingly multipolar world, and at the same time we see looming crises dictated by climate, pandemic was an example, and also new factors like AI are going to be disruptors, which is going to empower a lot of people who were not empowered to information that they had earlier. So I think we have to think of new paradigms. And my take on this is that this is something we call in Asian Confluence the third space, which is yes, diplomacy between governments, as Ario was also talking, not only between nations, but also between subnational states and the federal. In India, for example, we have a federal structure. So it is at a government to government level, it needs redefining, but it also needs to be taken. There are other levels of diplomacy, such as in business, there are lots of negotiations happening, which is going to become game changers. The digital divide is, soon, is getting bridged. So that, and what I call the third space, which is, I think we need more people-to-people contacts to establish an understructure of trust between institutions, trust in bigger ideas, so that the diplomats can achieve their goals better, I think. So this is where I would say that more people-to-people contacts are really needed between at various levels.
Right. I mean, like, if we think about the bigger picture that you mentioned as well with business, for example, that of course we're living in a time where tech oligarchs are accumulating an unprecedented amount of wealth in the world, and are increasingly becoming political actors themselves. We can see this, for example, with Elon Musk, who was first taken over X, and to have a unprecedented amount of control over one of the most important media platforms in the world, and has now been appointed by U.S. incoming President Donald Trump to take over a government post in the new U.S. government. So I think this really shows the need for civil societies around the world to react somehow and to build resilient structures towards like a further kind of takeover by business interests in kind of the economization of diplomacy in that sense. So how do you do that in practice? What are your best practices on making civil society more resilient, maybe on a regional level?
So, for example, I'll give you an example. Asian Confluence, a think tank that I am part of, works in the Eastern South Asian region. So if we are today in Dhaka, so we work on India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, the Bay of Bengal region, actually, and we we try to encourage and this region, if you see it geographically, it's a story of so near yet so far. There are cultural contacts, there are historical contacts, people speak the same language, lifestyles are similar, yet the divide between, it's the least integrated economically. So what we try to do is create conversations, create exchanges between various layers, whether it's the cultural experts, whether it's the business groups, whether it's artists, whether it's entrepreneurs, and bring in the governments and the policies as well into the fray. So when, say, an entrepreneur from Bangladesh and India talk to each other, or we just had an exchange group from Thailand recently, we try to bring in both government, business and civil societies together to kind of go across disciplines and think about like real issue, real projects that can be done. One of the things that we've noticed is it does create an environment of trust. And you will agree with me, I think, that trust, one of the main tenets of diplomacy is, I think, to create an atmosphere of trust where the goals of each can be achieved, essentially, so that, free and frank discussions can happen. Diplomacy should actually create that environment, and I think this third space, empowering the third space, does help in that sense, basically. For example, we've also had forums where sticky issues like water between India and Bangladesh have been discussed in a rather cordial atmosphere, because we are thinking about not just the cliched issues that are there, they are real world issues, but also the larger issues which facing everybody, trying to find out the common factors rather than looking at or dealing with the differences, trying to seek convergences. So these are certain
the Harvard
areas.
Business School model of looking at common interests, identifying common interests on a table.
Well, more than giving the credit to Harvard Business School, I think it's a common sense approach. If you and I have to differ on many things but agree on some things, I think it's important to start on what we agree on.
Of course.
And where our common interests lie and convergences lie.
Of course.
So I think redefining models is also an important area. Increasingly changing world, and which so many challenges are there. We need to find new models of how to engage.
Absolutely. And while I would not, or certainly not, advocate to always look for best practices towards Europe, I think when it comes to regional cooperation, at least from a German perspective, there is really something that resonates very well with me, because coming from Germany, of course, a country that had, very, very bad and very securitized neighborly relations for centuries, basically. We were just looking at our neighborhood through the lens of security, even though there were lots of common interests, shared, heritages around across the border and so on. And this really ended in a catastrophe. But after the catastrophe, there was a fresh start, and we really started to completely redefine our neighborhood relations in a sense that was based on mutual trust, cooperation, and resulted in a way in the creation of the EU, a common space. So does that mean that there are no problems between the different member states? No, of course there are irritations on a political level. We've seen this now between the Polish and the German government on security issues sometimes. That's still there, but the whole foundation is very different. It's focused on mutual interest, exchange, a common economic zone, and this has really changed the outlook for our country in an extreme way that goes beyond imagination. So much capacity was available, going away from the security sector to actually building, the economy. I think this resonates very well. But now I want to move to city diplomacy, if you don't mind. So, of course, we're living in times where more and more people around the world are living in cities. And I think what we see as well is through digitization, through the internet, of course, the living realities of people in cities in different countries are becoming more and more similar. while actually the rural areas in different countries are, like often experiencing like increasing cultural gap to the cities of their
Yes.
countries. So this has negative sides, a rural urban division, of course, but it also has potential for something positive,
Exactly.
which is city to city cooperation,
Yes.
right? So what does this concept, and I know that you're actively working on that, what does it actually bring as advantages, and how does it look like in practice? I mean, how does it really
Okay.
look like?
Okay, thank you for the good question. I would like to reiterate what Mr. Dutta has said. So city diplomacy is built upon several concepts. The first one is, we acknowledge there is some sort of fragmentation that you mentioned, and second, we also build upon trust. Actually, it's three concepts, and the other one is it's not only about government to government, but also to include civil society as well. So talking about city diplomacy, meaning that we have to acknowledge that the role of the states has been some sort of fragmented. The state is unable to act as one unitary unit anymore, like the past, like the way the leader is the state, the king is the state. No, the states are now fragmented into different levels. One of them is cities or regions or provinces, and the other thing is the cities. Yet, as you mentioned, experience some sort of urbanization, digitalization, which makes them acknowledge their role as agents in globalization. The people become more and more conscious that, okay, so globalization is happening right here, right now, and we have to do something about it. So in practice, city diplomacy is actually quite straightforward in the sense that, okay, the state decentralized their powers to the lower level, while at the same time, the mayors, the subnational government, as they become more and more conscious, they begin to open their network to the international partners. And I agree that this sort of engagement can also provide more trust and civil society engagement because, let me tell you a story about my hometown, Surabaya. We have a sister city engagement with one city in Japan called Kitakyushu since, informally since 1997. It began as an informal discussion between these two cities in discussing how to manage environmental issues in our respective cities. So it then continued as more and more as deeper cooperation, and it was legalized as a sister city cooperation back in 2012, in which both cities agreed to share practices and also to educate the civil society on how to manage waste, how to cooperate on environmental issues, and how to basically build a more sustainable city. So it's not only about government, but in one practice, the government of Kitakyushu send their experts, and then the city of Surabaya provide their local leaders to be educated on how to manage home waste, household waste, and it happened in one period of time, and then the leaders implement those practices in their respective suburbs, and it's been happening until now. And the most famous way of waste management in Surabaya is now called Takakura, from the name of that expert from Kitakyushu. So if you go to Surabaya, you will find lots of Takakura processing system, and the name is from the professor from Kitakyushu. And that is one aspect that we can use from city diplomacy to tackle those problems. And also, it's not only about practical, economic or practical solutions, but also we build some sort of element of trust with the Japanese society, because not only they send their experts to Surabaya, but sometimes we provide some more cultural exchanges in the sense that they these two cities conduct annual joint festivals in which they learn about each other cultures, and it's not only with Kitakyushu, but also with the other 14 foreign cities that Surabaya has the cooperation with.
And they're in all continents, all over the world, or
all over the world.
Wow.
So this is the interesting part. Those 14 cities are not only from the Asian region, but also from all over the world. We have one from the US, Seattle. We have one from France, Marseille, and we're proud to announce that also Surabaya has also conducted two new cooperation, one with Liverpool, the UK, and one with Gaziantep in Turkey. So yeah, I think this sort of cooperation can also be replicated everywhere, because yeah, this not only can tackle the specific issues that is currently happening in their respective cities, but also can also build like element of trust between these two societies. Because yeah, I agree that diplomacy is in crisis. There are lots of interest happening, lots of gridlocks happening in the state level, but when we look at the subnational level, usually those gridlocks will disappear, because we're talking about real issues, real people, and we're talking about low political issues that usually has little to no national interest at all, because it's real problem. Yeah.
Right, but a few caveats to that. I mean, first of all, of course, the concept of city diplomacy is not entirely new. It's an old concept. If you look at Wikipedia, for example, and check out the pages of different cities, you will always find a section which shows, the twin cities of each city.
Exactly.
But oftentimes, of course, this is not really filled with much life. And I guess, one issue is as well that sometimes political considerations do play a role. For example, if the national governments of two countries that have twin cities are not getting along anymore, most likely the twin city partnership is not going to work very well as well. So of course there is an interconnection to the bigger national policy as well. So how can you what can you do to counter that, to really build more resilient city-to-city networks?
Okay. Well, that's currently happening with, if I'm not mistaken, Melbourne and St. Petersburg in Russia, in a symbolic protest to the invasion of Ukraine. But that's a rare occasion. So yes, I also agree that sometimes city diplomacy can stop in the MOUs and no further programs. So my advice to the city diplomats or to city officials is, always begin with the goals in mind. Always know what's your potential and what is you're looking for from this partnership. So, it is not correct to think about the partners in the front, but you have to think about your goals, what are your targets, and what are you going to learn from the foreign cities. And next one, and the next, just search for the partners that are suitable, not only in the sense of in the goals, but also the same size, the same economic capacity, the same maybe culture, because cultural sensitivity is one of the aspects that can enhance the quality of city diplomacy. Without those aspects, well, city diplomacy can still run, but it will not run effectively.
Of course, I was wondering, is that something that could be interesting for your region as well, to build, for example, resilient networks of city-to-city cooperation between, let's say, cities in Meghalaya and in Sylhet in Bangladesh, or is this something?
No, we actually, in fact, I would like to draw a leaf from what he just said. We are actually, without calling it city diplomacy, we are already engaged because when there is a overall will amongst the nations to work together. For example, there have been a lot of talk about connectivity within BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal. And if you see this region, there is lots of mountain cities which have common challenges. So we have been working towards bringing in mayors of different cities or administrations of different cities, or enabling best practices of dealing with, say, mountain area, urban flooding, which is a very big issue, relating to urban disasters, waste management. These are things that I think are projects which really matter to the people on the ground, and they create trust. And they can empower the national governments to also enable a more constructive discussion on and take the relationship forward. So certainly between Meghalaya and Sylhet, we've been trying to encourage tourism, because it's contiguous regions. So these are certainly areas and enablers, I think, to to help diplomacy to take or show results and take it to the next level and really make good cases for multilateral efforts. But I also agree with you that while these are bottom-up efforts and much needed, the top-down also does matter. So I think we need an area in the challenge is how to meet the bottom-up and the top-down.
Of course, and I mean we see at the moment, of course, that this is not really progressing. I mean, if we just think about one of the most pressing issues in the world, of course, climate change, two issues that affect your two regions fundamentally. Of course, I mean the Seven Sister States are heavily affected by the effects of climate change in the Himalayas. Then Indonesia is building a new capital because of potentially giving up Jakarta as a capital for the effects of climate change, essentially. So of course, I mean, it is really, really pressing, and we are not really moving forward. I mean, the COP process, another process of multilateralism, is increasingly looking like it's coming to an end. It's not really working anywhere. It's not really going. So I mean, now for the last 3-4 minutes of our discussion that we have, I mean, let's really think about the urgency of the challenges and what can we do to really get out of that. I mean, I think, yes, we have discussed and we talked about some ways forward or ways that can actually do something to move forward, but there's a long way to go. I mean, the challenges are huge at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, let's begin. Well, as an academia, I believe that something which we really need to do, from our perspective, is to make sure that everyone knows that we're all in this together. We have to mainstream the paradigm that globalization is interconnected. Just the way we talk about sustainable development, we cannot talk about only one particular point, but also we have to understand that this point will relate to those points and so on and so forth. So, in my opinion, we have to understand our position as actors in globalization. We cannot solely rely on states because, as the new paradigm of international relations, we understand that individuals now can act as game changers in international relations. So I think what we need to do is to increase our sensitivity in sensing what is currently happening around us, and we can understand how this can correlate to the greater issue of globalization, and how can we collaborate with the others in tackling those issues. One of them, as I've mentioned before, we can enhance city diplomacy, we can enhance civil society in different countries, so that when we think about globalization, we do not really think only about the intergovernmental Indonesian level, but also even in the village level, the city level, we can collaborate with the like-minded people, organization. So I think that's the pressing need and the most realistic thing to do for me now.
So
at the moment,
moving to a sense of global citizenship where people, like-minded people, work together.
We have to think more cosmopolitan, I think.
Mm-hmm. What?
Very quickly, I think there's a lot of cynicism in the world today. People are losing trust in their institutions. People are losing trust in their own governments. And I think we need, and the challenges are so big. I think we need tangible outcomes on tangible projects, which will create confidence in institutions and in each other. So I would say, if say India and Germany, or India and Bangladesh, or India and Indonesia, work together on a project, makes it really happen and show the results of how it has benefited the last man on the last mile. And that becomes a point of discussion, and how to replicate that, and how to expand that and scale that up. I think that's the way to move forward, so that we can create trust back in and more of the institutions at play to address the challenges, which are, we even don't know how many more challenges we have. I mean, there are so many, So
Yeah.
Well, I guess wonderful last words. Or do you want to add something? No.
Oh, no.
So then we leave it here. I think we did understand, hopefully, the gravity of the challenges and that diplomacy at the moment really is in a deep state of crisis and soul searching. But we were also able to discuss at least two ways of looking forward that give us hope for the future of diplomacy. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you can,